Welcome back. Now, the military has been deployed to KZN to assist with relief efforts, but the flooding has affected some of its bases in the province. What can the SANDF do to help? For more on this, let's speak to Guy Martin, a Defence Web Editor who joins us now virtually. Mr. Martin, thank you very much for your time. I think that's the main question for a lot of people, right? The SANDF, will they be able to actually reach some of these communities with the roads being so bad? Do they have usually the type of material that they need to do this? I mean, earlier this week, the chief said they even their helicopter couldn't get to a certain area.
Oh, good afternoon, and thanks for having me. So the SANDF have a few capabilities that they can bring to the table. They've got engineers, they've got divers, they've got water purification equipment. They can provide temporary accommodation. But the most important thing that they can contribute is to search and rescue. But unfortunately, most of that is done with helicopters. And the Air Force at the moment has very few helicopters available. So they have sent several helicopters to KZN, but most of the helicopters the serviceable ones are deployed to the DRC and Mozambique. We've got 5 Oryx helicopters in the DRC and 2 in Mozambique. They're out of the 40-strong fleet of Oryx helicopters, we've only got about 17 that are serviceable. So there are very few that are available. And there are other smaller helicopters that can assist, but again, serviceability is quite poor. In February this year, only a quarter of the Air Force's aircraft were serviceable. So the SANDF is very thinly stretched, and they've got commitments inside and outside the country, and the defence budget continues to decline. So this is really putting a strain on the Defence Force. And I think we're starting to see this with the limited response that they've been able to provide with the flood relief in KZN.
That's actually quite depressing, actually, to tell you the truth, because most of the time when you think of the SANDF coming out, you think of more resources, right? Things that could do a give us better results compared to police. And as I speak to you, Mr. Martin, we're seeing breaking news. The death toll has risen from 341 to 395 lives that have been lost in just a few days in KZN due to these floods. Many more are missing. And Mr. Martin, while I still have you, I want to talk about the engineering within the SANDF. Can the engineers within the SANDF who have more capabilities, I assume, can they not be used for water purification and other means that are needed in terms of our road infrastructure, etc., instead of relying on the private sector that might cost us even more?
Certainly, the SANDF, the Air Force is very, very in a very poor state, whereas the Landward Force, the Army, and their engineers, they're much better capacitated. They still have a lot of vehicles. They've got skills and equipment. So, as I mentioned, they can help with erecting temporary bridges. The engineers can clear roads and assist with logistics, helping other government departments, and so on. But again, all those measures are very temporary. The SANDF is not, they don't have the capacity to put in, say, tar roads. They can maybe clear roads, put in a few bridges, but they don't have the capacity to permanently fix infrastructure. Same with water purification and so on. All their capabilities are meant for temporary deployment to places like the DRC or to Mozambique. So what they can do is help a little bit initially, but it's not going to be a long-term solution, unfortunately.
So would I be unfair if I said that, the South African National Defence Force at this point in KZN is not going to be as useful, and it's not because of, not being able to, it's because they're quite stretched in terms of the resources that are needed?
Yes, they are extremely stretched. The SANDF keeps being given more and more tasks to do. For instance, deploying to the SADC mission in Mozambique. We've just seen the Chief of the Defence Force announce that even more soldiers are going to be sent to Mozambique, up to 1,500, and they are supported by aircraft, by vehicles, by a huge logistics effort, and of course it's personnel that are going over. So there's very little left for these domestic emergencies. You must remember that the SANDF is also, they've got thousands of troops deployed on the border for border security. There was an anti-poaching deployment down in the Western Cape. We've got over 1,000 troops in the DRC. And of course, once you have troops on deployment, you might have 1,000 troops deployed, you might have another 1,000 in training, and another 1,000 that have just come home. So you've got, for every one troop deployed, you might have 3 that are either resting or training. So the numbers are quite scary. The SANDF is very, very, very thinly stretched. And what concerns me is that if there's another July riots type situation,
Exactly.
I think that SANDF will be even harder pressed to respond to something like that if it happens again.
So then what is our solution then? I mean, if you look at it, is it a matter of getting more SANDF members? That would also mean giving more budget, because it seems like in the past 2-3 years we've needed them even more than before in terms of our domestic issues, right? So what's the solution then? Do we get more members, give it more budget?
Yeah, budget is the best place to start. So the budget has been cut and cut and cut, but responsibilities have just been expanded over the years. And even with things like the July riots, commitments internationally, the Department of Defense has not been given more money. So either the government needs to say, right, well, we're going to capacitate the SANDF better, provide more money, or they need to scale back the scope of the SANDF's tasks. But one or the other has to happen, because at the moment the SANDF is stretched to breaking point. And like now, if there's another emergency, I'm not sure the SANDF would be able to respond adequately. So to answer your question, budget is the first thing. And also other issues need to be addressed. So one of the reasons why the Air Force has so few aircraft that are serviceable is the poor situation at Denel. Denel are struggling to pay their pay staff their salaries, to pay their suppliers, and this is impacting on the serviceability of South African Air Force aircraft.